Welcome to Garage Gym Athlete Ask Me Anything. It's pretty simple. I'll be answering questions from the thousands of athletes that follow our daily programming. If you have a question or topic you want submitted, go to garagegymathlete.com/AMA. Let's get started. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. Jerred Moon here with Joe Courtney. What's up, Joe?
Flipping fantastic, Jerred.
Well, that's great.
Didn't really answer your question, but I already had that preloaded, so
like,
I don't really care what you're asking.
I was going to say that no matter what.
Could have been like, yeah, you could have been like, what'd you eat today? Flipping fantastic.
Flipping pancakes.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, let's get into this one. We're talking Vo2Max today. Jeremy asked, "Hi, Jerred. Over the weekend, I researched Vo2Max. I have a little understanding of what it is, but wanted a more detailed explanation from a trusted source. What is it and how to improve your Vo2Max? What exercises are best for improving your max? Thank you for all you do for the GGA community." Thank you very much. So real quick, I mean, the definition of Vo2Max, and we can get into this more, but I mean, Vo2Max is simply the maximum rate of oxygen consumption measured during exercise, and it's how much volume of oxygen you can handle and the maximum amount recorded over a certain time period. And typically the higher the Vo2Max, the more oxygen your body can utilize, and so the fitter you are and the more you can work you can put out. I mean, that's the short and sweet of Vo2Max. But I think speaking in more practical terms, because scientific terms, I mean, that's what it is liters, or typically liters of oxygen your body is using, like I said, over a time period, and we can get into that time period, but it's a very strong indicator of health and longevity. Like when they look at different studies for people who live the longest, Vo2Max is heavily correlated to how long you live, assuming you don't get hit by a bus. So, yeah.
I hear bus hits are bad for your Vo2Max.
Yeah, they crush it. No pun intended. So anyway, Vo2Max is important. It is a thing worth tracking. It's just hard to track because how you should really be tracking Vo2Max, or the best way is, I'm sure you've seen people do it. You strap on a mask.
The hose in your mouth.
Yeah, basically you strap on a mask and then you get on a treadmill test, and typically what they do is they have you run at a certain grade for, it's typically a certain amount of time, like 1 to 3 minutes, and then they increase it, and they just keep increasing that until you quit is really what it is. They go until you quit. And then once you quit, they tabulate your Vo2Max score. And the reason I like that test a little bit more is because it throws in a little bit of that mental fortitude in there, and like you pushing forward and all these things, and how you measure it at home is just very different. And that's why I don't like it as much for true Vo2Max, but it doesn't really matter. Because let's say you're measuring with your Apple Watch, if you're consistently wrong, at least you'll see, as long as you're just doing the same test every time, I think it's okay. So Vo2Max,
the same test that you would do for to get your max heart rate, because both of them sound awful.
Yeah, I mean, very similar. And you can stack these tests too. Like I've done the Vo2Max where they are pricking my finger every 3 minutes to test my blood lactate levels, and trying to see where you're at there and your lactate threshold. So there are a lot of different things you can test. But Vo2Max, I do think, is really important. Now, how do you train it? How do you improve it? And then we can talk about measuring it, because I think, Joe's done it. I've done it with more at-home type stuff. But the first thing I think everyone needs to realize, if you dive into the research on Vo2Max, you're going to see a lot of things about high-intensity training improving Vo2Max. But if you normalize the results for time and effort, work output, it's basically the same with like mid-level intensity and high intensity. They both produce about the same results. It obviously will just take longer periods of time. So you could do high intensity for, just an example, like say 30 minutes, that'll improve your Vo2Max. But a medium amount of intensity for 45 to 60 minutes will improve your Vo2Max the same amount, but it just takes longer. but it might be better for you as opposed to doing high intensity all the time. And so the trap I think people get into is they think to increase VO2 max, if you're trying to look at scientific studies, you're going to see a lot of stuff about high intensity interval training to improve your VO2 max, and it will work. But what this could lead you to doing is just getting on a high intensity interval training on a daily basis program to try and increase your VO2 max. And for what cause? Just, for the sake of this number that you're tracking, and screw everything else, your recovery, and you're just going to hit it hard every day to try and improve your VO2 max. When, like I said, you could do it with other types of training. And then also, you can only improve it so much if you don't widen your aerobic base. And that's what's completely missed, is these powerhouses with massive VO2 maxes, like cyclists and runners and stuff. They have this ridiculous base of aerobic conditioning that they got by training for very long periods of time at very low intensity. And so that's what I think is missed. So the true way to improve it would be to do a lot of low intensity, like zone 2 level aerobic base training to widen your aerobic base, then throw in some high intensity interval type training, once or twice per week. And that's going to give you a lot more trajectory room for VO2 max. If you just go out in your garage or go to the gym and you're like, I'm going to increase VO2 max, 30-minute high intensity interval training, you'll bump it up, let's say a couple points. But then you'll be stuck. If you want like a true, like, hey, I want to get to that elite level of VO2 max, you need to do a bunch of aerobic training, widen that base as big as you can, and then throw in some high intensity interval training here and there to increase it some more. So that's my take on it. What are your thoughts on VO2 max or measuring it, tracking, anything like that, Joe?
I don't have a ton to say about it, but if you have certain wearables, a lot of our athletes are now getting into wearables because we do like a lot of things with heart rate. Check out what your wearable is and see what if there's a test or what you have to do to calibrate it. Because a lot of times you'll be gathering all this data. Like I had my Garmin, I was gathering data for a while, and I was like, what the heck? Why isn't my VO2 max showing up? And I looked it up at what I had to do, and it was like two runs within a week, 10 minutes long, getting my heart rate up to 80%, and then it was giving me VO2 max score and stuff like that. And then you mentioned Apple has something like that, so or whatever your device is, and see if you can just test it out and see what it is, and jump on the train, see how it can affect.
Yeah, and I've looked into Apple Watches specifically. So if you have an Apple Watch, they measure VO2 max, but they have like parameters. I think it's only 2 as of recording this, and up to my up-to-date knowledge. Apple Watch records your VO2 max under 2 circumstances. The first is so you have different workout selections that you can make when you start exercise. And the first one is an outdoor walk, and the second one is an outdoor run. And I'm pretty sure the time threshold is a minimum of 20 minutes. So you have to walk at a brisk pace outside for 20 minutes, or you have to run outside for 20 minutes. And what they're doing is they're measuring the distance you're covering under a certain time frame, and also where your heart rate is at. And then they're giving you an estimate. Obviously, none of this is tied to your lungs at all, right? How much oxygen you're taking in, but they're using some pretty strong calculators and estimates to take it in. It's not the most accurate, but they've gotten pretty good. Like, it's not that bad. It just wouldn't be as accurate as the super expensive, stupid test that I'm talking about I've done, because why would you go do that? Like, you don't need to. And I'm assuming their algorithms will only get better and better. The reason I don't like those as much is because, and this is just a personal stance, like I might go for a run for 20 minutes or longer with a vest on, and that's going to screw things up, right? My heart rate's going to be much higher with a vest on than it would be without a vest on. Or maybe I turn it on for like a walk, and I was going super slow or whatever. So you have to kind of be like intentional about how you're going to measure it and track it, and just pay attention to that. So that if you have an Apple Watch and you pull up your Apple Watch Health, like it already might have some VO2 max recordings in there. And that's why I'm saying ignore those if you weren't intentionally trying to measure it, and then have like days where you're like, hey, I'm going to try and test my VO2 max, where you're like, all right, I'm going to do a 21-minute run for max distance, and then just go do it. And then that would be a more accurate reading than like, randomly doing something else and having the app on. So that's about it. That's how to measure it, how to improve it. Don't miss that low intensity piece that I think would be the best at really giving you the best bang for your buck for VO2 max. But VO2 max, super important, like super important in living longer, in my opinion. More like much better than heart rate variability or anything else you could be tracking. And you also don't need to like be at this ridiculously elite level. If you do look at we did, like, it was a podcast about, man, I think it was the one where we talk about zone 2 a lot when we first brought up zone 2 in the GGA podcast. Mm-hmm. That was the one that looked at VO2 maxes, low intensity training, and how long you would live based off of your VO2 max. So that is the least helpful thing I could have said, probably right here at the end. But if you guys go find it, the information is there, and you can even go to the blog and check out the studies we've already pulled on it.
It's great to improve, but doesn't do a ton for you day to day.
Yeah,
it's not going to fluctuate.
It's something you would want to test maybe once a quarter, just to see what kind of improvement you're getting. I definitely wouldn't test it weekly or monthly or anything like that, because that would suck. Those tests should suck a little bit, just so we're all clear.
Yeah, like, I've thought about doing those, but I haven't even looked at the cost, or even if it was free, I would just be very hesitant on either of those things, especially like my max heart rate, because I am curious what that actually is, but still.
But I mean, I think even if you're just doing it with your watch for a 20-minute run, that should suck too. It shouldn't, because if you just go for, like I said, they're trying to see how much distance you cover over time, and then they're looking at your heart rate. And then, so if you're going slow, like, you're not covering as much distance, but your heart rate's, slightly elevated, like, it's going to give you a bad reading, and it'll give you a number. It might not be truly accurate. So it really should kind of be like 20. And the reason I say 21 minutes is because 20 minutes is a threshold. Let's just make sure that we meet the threshold, so you don't do the test and like miss it. They're like, oh, sorry, we don't have enough data. So do 21-minute timed run for distance. And I think that will give you the best reading you can with Apple Watch, at least. All right, that's it. If you guys have a question, go to garagegymathlete.com/AMA, and we will answer the question here on the podcast, video form and audio format. And so if you are listening right now via podcast player, 5-star review and positive comment. Hey, I say that every time, but can you just go do it if you haven't? Go do it right now. I know you hear me say it, but I'd love for you to do it. That'd be awesome. And I'd really, really appreciate it. And YouTube, subscribe to the channel so you can see these come out every single week. Give us a thumbs up. Let us know what you think of the videos in the comments section. But that is it for this one. Thanks for watching or listening. I hope you enjoyed today's Ask Me Anything episode. So one more time, if you want to submit a question, topic, or idea, you can do so at garagegymathlete.com/AMA. And hey, while you're there, if you haven't already, sign up for Garage Gym Athlete membership. We are the best community and programming on the internet. I dare you to try and prove me wrong.